Is it on? It's on. Once again, good morning and happy Sabbath. Good to see everybody. Sometime I'm thinking that through the week we all run in different places with our own lives and plans and troubles and joys and whatever life brings to you. But then on Sabbath, we stop everything and want to come together as one and as family, as God's children, to strengthen each other, to be with each other, and also to learn from each other. And mainly, we open the scriptures, we open the Bible. I was having the series on devotional life, as some of you might remember. But I interrupted that series because we like to focus now on soul winning, which it's called actually practical Christianity. You have theology, but then theology is reflected on the daily life, and you call that practical Christianity, or applied theology it's also called. So, and soul winning it's called witnessing, and soul winning, it's part of the practical Christianity. Do we have a slide? It's coming. Thank you. And today would be the first sermon, and it would be followed up by some very simple classes on what I call personal evangelism. We were setting up a time and a date, but there is a little bit of a conflict between a scheduled event and the class, so we have to figure that out. Today, the first of this short series of sermons is called My Father's Business. And I was thinking to ask, do we have someone that's 12 in the audience? Is there anybody 12 in the audience? Do you have anybody that's 12? Hey! Would you be so courageous as you've been sometimes and come and read a passage from the Bible for me, please? Would that be okay? Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. You're a courageous young man. Thank you. Well, the passage I'd like you to read, you know the passage. It's about Jesus is going to the temple. So would you mind reading verses 41 to basically 49?
His parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. When they had finished the days as they returned, the boy Jesus lingered behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother did not know it. But supposing him to have been in the company, they went a day's journey and sought him among the relatives and acquaintances. So when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem seeking him. Now so it was that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were as astonished at his understanding and answers. So when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously."
49.
Right. And he said to them, "Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?"
Thank you so much. No, I always have a problem with names, and sometimes I confuse them. And I try to guess who's Gabriel and who's Nathan. And I think you are Nathan. Got it right. So look at Nathan. He's 12. Jesus was the same age with Nathan when he went to the temple. So can you imagine a young man like Nathan having a theological conversation with someone like me? I'm 62. I've gone through theological training, through lots of seminars, classes, reading And can you imagine me and Nathan having a theological conversation where Nathan would ask me questions that will make me really think? Or well, Nathan would ask me questions and I will say, you might be right about that. I never thought of it. I've never seen it this way. So, thank you so much, Nathan. Oh. Candy for you. So, as we've read the passage, verse 49, and he said to them, "Why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business?" So again, and Nathan gives us a very visual illustration about the age of Jesus as he went to the temple and he has a conversation with the pastors and the priests and the theologians of his time. But beyond that, he gives an answer to his parents, actually to his mother. And the answer was, as you know, why did you seek me? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business? So, with this illustration in mind, I want to point to three things. And I'll come lately to the most important. Number one is that Jesus didn't spend his childhood in India. Have you heard people saying that, we don't know much about Jesus, and Jesus, when he was a child and a youth, he spent his time in the Oriental countries, and actually he brought those ideas to the Bible and to Jerusalem. Have you heard anybody saying that? You haven't. Well, I've heard people saying, Jesus spent his time in India, that's why we don't, or India, or somewhere in the Orient, that's why we don't know much about him. Well, we know about him, and we know him that at 12, as usual, he was at the temple talking to the theologians and priests of his time. Second, and when people make that point, they want to say, well, what Jesus taught actually comes from the Oriental philosophy and wisdom, which is not true. Another interesting observation, there is no place in the Bible where Jesus called Joseph his father. Even though the expression Jesus, the son of Joseph, is in the genealogies of the Bible and is mentioned once in the Gospel of John. Actually, we do not have a record of Jesus calling Joseph his father. And that's an interesting observation. But the third point connected to the second is that Jesus actually was 12 when he makes that very interesting statement, which is, didn't you know that I must be about my Father's business? So by 12, Jesus understands that God is his Father and he is the Son of God. Right? He already understood that. So you wonder, how did Jesus understand that? And that's amazing for me because by 12 years old, Jesus has a very clear spiritual identity. He understood who he was, he understood what his role was. And there has never been a child like Jesus. Never has been one like him in very many aspects. But Jesus had a very special relationship with God since he was very young. Now, in today's culture, last night, I'll come back to this example, I was at the fair, at the county fair in Lakeport. Lots of young people, and lots of children. And I was looking at these young people and young children, and I said, how can we reach out to them? What can we do to lead them to the source of life? Many of those kids and many of those youth, sooner or later, I was there, and I have a slide, but it's not here. We approach people with what's called an health age survey. And in the health age survey, based on one of the studies that has been done in Southern California, it's called Alameda study. they came up with seven items of a healthy lifestyle that will determine if you live longer or your life is shorter, or they determine basically the age of your body. And you can add, at one point you can add, if you follow these 7 lifestyle habits, you at one point you can add even about 15, you can subtract from your social age 15 years. But if you don't follow them, you can actually add, and your body is older than your social age. So based on a scale, you can determine that. So people would come, and Brother Bill was there, and a few other people. I remember there was at one point, I think it was the grandfather and 2 kids, but I didn't know who they were, and there was a tall young lady. I thought that she was older. And because she looked older, she looked more mature. And I was doing the survey. One of the questions is, do you smoke or do you use alcohol? And there was a boy also. And the boy was 12. And at the question on alcohol, he said yes. So I was wondering, a boy who's 12, the age of Nathan, and using alcohol, what is his future? Is it a good one? Definitely raises a lot of questions. So the point being, how do we raise our young people? How do we raise our children with a strong spiritual identity? That they would understand what is their role in life and what is their purpose and mission in life. You have young people that go to college and they don't know exactly which day they will turn their life. Jesus makes the statement, my Father's business. So the question is, what was Jesus' business? And at one point in his life, in a sermon in Nazareth, when he will go back, he will actually make a statement, an introductory statement to his mission. And that was a quote Jesus is quoting from the book of Isaiah 61, 1-3. And he would say, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach the good tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of the vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to console those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. The mission of Christ, the Father's business, was to bless someone and to reveal God's character to a lost humanity. In every intention of his acts, Jesus was actually reaching out to people. Everything that he did had a spiritual purpose. In every act of his life, Jesus had a spiritual purpose. In all his interactions with people, he had a spiritual purpose. That was his business. In one of the writings, Ellen White says, the work of the gospel is not to depend solely upon the ministers. Every soul should take an active part in advancing the cause of God. But instead of this, how many in our large churches, this is not a large church, fortunately, but how many in the large churches come and go like door upon its hinges, feeling no responsibility for the progress of the work, no interest in salvation of souls for whom Christ died. They do not dream of waiving their religion into their business. They do not dream of waiving their religion in their business. There is a story. There's a big business, and I forgot the name of the business, but one of these very prosperous banks, I think, very prosperous business. And one day, the owner of the business got into an office and found one of his guys in his chair with his feet on the desk, and he was taking a nap. And he comes to him and shook him and said, "What are you doing? Are you dreaming here? What, are you sleeping?" And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. And then the owner of the business says, "Go back to sleep and dream how to make my business prosper. Go back to dream how to make my business prosper." They do not dream of weaving their religion into their business. It continues. They say, religion is religion and business is business. They believe each has a proper sphere, but let them be separated. But in whatever calling the Christian is found, he has his work to do for the Lord in representing Christ to the world. Whatever may be our occupation, we are to be missionaries, having for our chief aim the winning of souls to Christ. So the first part of our study this morning, it's I would say, it's re-emphasizing the fact that it doesn't matter what your business is. True, I am the professional, I'm the pastor, I'm the employee of the church. So my business is obviously soul winning, by definition. But is that limited to me? Is it limited to me? As far as we understand this, Jesus put it, the question would be, are you in the Father's business? How am I in the Father's business? Beyond the fact that someone could be a mechanic or a dentist or a carpenter or a painter or any other sort of a job we have, if I understand that right, the main business of God's children is to represent Christ to the world in every aspect of our lives, and that includes our business. So, in seeing how Jesus did that, I'll invite you to look with me at one of the well-known Bible stories, which is in John chapter 4, in the Gospel of John chapter 4, and we'll begin reading verse 1. Verses 1 to 6. Therefore, when the Lord knew that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. But he needed to go through Samaria. So he came to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near the plot ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus by the well. It was about the 6th hour, which makes it the noontime. So I will invite you to look with me in the life of Christ. How did he do this kind of business of reaching out to souls? So we can learn from that how to do it ourselves. So as you can see in this diagram, Jerusalem is down here, and Jesus was going up north to Galilee. Here is the lake of the Galilee, the Sea of Galilee as it's called sometime. And there are two routes to go up north, two routes. One was on the shores of Jordan River. And this was a pleasant journey. You have vegetation, you have water. It was basically the most pleasant way to go up north. And there is another route to go up north, which was this one, which was a little shorter in a sense, but you had to go through an unpleasant section of the journey, which was Samaria. Now, if you were Jesus, which one would you take? Which route would you take? I would tend to say, well, why go? Why would I look for trouble, go through an unhospitable territory of the Samaritans? I would rather choose to go Jordan Valley, beautiful, nice, refreshing, places to rest and go up north. So this distance, it's about 50 miles. It would probably be covered in about 2 days of walking. And Jesus is here in Jerusalem, and he has to make a decision which way he would go. So imagine the morning of the day when Jesus and his disciples, they have to make the decision, which way shall we go? If you go to a journey, if you have to drive somewhere, sometime you sit down, you look over the map and you see a few routes. Obviously, you look over your Google Maps or whatever app you have, and you try to figure out what's the best route to go. Well, that morning, Jesus had to decide which way would he go. Now, the question I have is, did Jesus pray about that? Did Jesus say in that morning, Lord, Father, show me the way. Show me which way shall I go? Or did Jesus make an independent decision? How many times, we live our lives and we just make decisions without even thinking to pray? Without even thinking that maybe God has a plan for me today. Or maybe God is ready to place in my way people that I should interact with. Well, Jesus made the choice that morning to go through the Samaria. As you know, Samaria was not the most pleasant area to travel through, because between Samaritans and the Jewish people there was an open hostility. So every time when the Jews would go through Samaria, they would spend as little time as possible in this area, simply because they didn't want to deal with the Samaritans at all. But Jesus chose that route, and I believe Jesus chose that route guided by God and inspired by the Holy Spirit. You know the story. So it was not just by chance that Jesus chose that route. Jesus will come to this place. Later the name was Sebaste, but before this was actually the name of Samaria, which was the capital of the region of Samaria. Jesus would make a statement in John chapter 6, "For I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me." So when we wake up in the morning, do we pray and we say, "Lord, I'm not here today to do my own will. Show me what your will is for me today"? The passage in Desire of the Ages, "So utterly was Christ emptied of self that he made no plans for himself. He accepted God's plans for him, and day by day the Father unfolded his plans. So should we depend upon maybe the simple outworking of his will." So again, for me, soul winning begins in the morning when we make the plans of the day. How do we process the schedule, and do we have in mind the business of the Father? When we start the day, do we pray and do we say, "Lord, lead my life today so I can reach someone, so I can be a blessing to someone. I don't know who and I don't know where, but here is my life. I put my life in your hands. Guide me to someone today." So the first observation, that Jesus didn't live his life by chance. So when we submit our will to God, life and its events are not the result of chance, but of providence. When we are in the business with God, he leads our steps to meet those whom he has already placed on our path. So soul winning, as we speak about it, it's not, it's not a plan designed by the conference or by the pastor. It becomes a spiritual experience. It is actually my experience with God, and it is your experience with God. We begin the day with asking the question, "Where do you want me to be today?" "Oh, I know, I'm at the hospital." But that's not the question. As I'm working at the hospital, who are you going to bring in my life today? And we should always keep that question in mind. If I have to go somewhere, or if my plans are changed for the day, maybe God has a plan to me to meet someone When we are in the Father's business, life is not going to be lived by chance. Continuing to read, a woman of Samaria came to draw water. So it's in the middle of the day, it's 12 o'clock, Jesus is there. He is tired, it is hot. The disciples left to do some shopping. But Jesus is there, and he spends his time in prayer, as usually he did when he had a quiet moment. As he is spending his time in prayer, he probably opens up the eyes and he sees a woman coming. A woman from the city comes in the middle of the day. Usually the water was, it was a heavy, I don't know if you've seen any of those pictures, when in the old days people will have a yoke. Something on their shoulders and the yoke, and then they will carry the water with the yoke. It was a hard duty job. And most of the people will do that in the morning. Nobody will come to lunch when it's 12 o'clock, when it's so hot, with some exceptions. People that were somehow socially outcast, that they didn't mingle with the rest of the people, they'll probably come to get the water when there is nobody at the well, because they didn't want to interact that much with other people and be embarrassed by them. So a woman comes in the middle of the day. Now, what is the question that Jesus is asking when Jesus sees this woman? And here I need you to say yes or no as you look at some of the questions. So when Jesus sees this woman coming and she's putting down her buckets and she's ready to start the water, what are the questions in Jesus' mind? What is her education? Yes or no? No. I don't think that Jesus asked the question, what's the education of this woman? What is her ethnicity or race? Did Jesus ask that question? No. Between Jewish people and Samaritans, there was this open antagonism. And in every culture, or in every country I was, you have these racial tensions. In my home country in Romania, Romanians have a problem with the gypsy people sometimes. And when I grew up, or even in today's language, sometimes a parent would say, "Are you a gypsy? Why do you eat like that?" So there is this tension, and also with the Hungarian people. Romanians and Hungarians had a problem because historically there was a political dispute over a certain, you've heard of Transylvania, any of you? Dracula, that false story. Well, Transylvania was disputed between Romanians and Hungarians, and there is a tension. It's still a tension there. Sometime you would, I have to remember, I didn't work in that part of the country. But if you'll travel in that part of the country, there are villages with Hungarian people, and you go to the store, and they talk to you in Hungarian, and you have no clue. So there is this tension between Romanians and Hungarians. Now, was there an ethnic question in Jesus' mind when he saw that woman? Shall we have racial questions in the church? Shall we have racial tensions or ethnical tensions in the church, in the Seventh-day Adventist Church? Shall we have them? No, definitely not. It doesn't matter what someone's race is. It doesn't matter what the color of the skin. It doesn't matter. All these issues have no place among God's people. Is she pretty? Did Jesus ask that question? You think that was important for Jesus? No. No, not at the point. I mean, Jesus was not interested in the shape of her skin. That was not interesting for him. What is her religion? Did Jesus ask about her religion? Did he ask about her social status? What's her position in the society? He didn't. When Jesus looked at that woman, he never asked a question of this kind. Those were not his questions. Does she have a soul? So that was the question I think Jesus asked. Does she have a soul? Obviously, the answer is yes. So, in the business of soul winning, there is only one question that matters, and the question is, does this person have a soul? And the answer is always yes, because all people have a soul. A soul meaning being a spiritual entity, a person that can make choices, a person that's a child of God. None of the questions matter, actually. In Galatians 3:28, there is neither Greek nor Jew or Greek, there is neither slave or free, there is neither male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. So as far as soul winning, there is only one criteria that matters, which is the soul of the people. That's what matters. So the second point is, as we look at people, let's look at people through the eyes of Christ. When in the Father's business we see people with the eyes of Jesus, race, social status, gender, finances, education, religion don't matter. With the eyes of Jesus, we don't see people, we see souls. The third point, it continues, John 4:7-9. So a woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Then the woman of Samaria said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask a drink from me, a Samaritan woman?" For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. So Jesus acts in a very strange and countercultural way. As he interacts with this person, he doesn't care at all about the racial differences, about the prejudices, about the religious differences between them. And not even about the fact that she's a woman and he's a young man, male. He reaches out to the woman and says, "May I have a drink?" Probably the woman, from what we see in the story, was completely shocked or very surprised. And she's answering him back and says, "Kind of strange that you, a Jew, are asking me to drink water." So to understand the culture in the Jewish tradition, if you wanted to humiliate someone, you would say to them, "You are a Samaritan." As in my culture was, "You are a gypsy." By the way, when I was in the service, the people that stood up for me when I was in the hardest moments of my life were two gypsy guys. And one of them actually was my best friend. We were working in the same team. Wonderful young man. A wonderful young man. And he stood up for me, as you call it, in a business meeting, against everybody else and against the officer, defending my side. So I grew up next to a gypsy colony, so I even though they stolen a few things from us, but I have no problem. And by the way, we have gypsy churches back home in Romania. And anyway, so she was very surprised to have Jesus reaching out to her and engaging her into dialogue. And she's looking at Jesus. And they begin an interesting conversation. So as we look at this example of how Jesus did interact with people, we learn from him. As we understand his methods of reaching out to people and working with them, we learn from Jesus to do the same, I would say. Desire of Ages, page 184. The hatred between Jesus and Samaritans prevented the woman from offering a kindness to Jesus. But the Savior was seeking to find the key to this heart. And with the tact born of divine love, he asked, not offered, a favor. So, in a very simple way, you may say Jesus becomes very creative in reaching out to this woman. And he is using the right tool to reach out to her heart. I was thinking of creating creative ways of reaching out to others, and I'm going to use a few examples. One, it's an interesting historical example. It's a simple one. There's a story about James White traveling on one of the boats on Missouri River with one of his sons, and I think it was Edson. And as their boat was going up the river, barges with big logs would travel down, many of them. And as James White with his son, as they are looking to these many barges with people with logs going down the river, as they go in the opposite way, James is thinking, how can we reach out to these people with the Advent message? And he got an interesting idea. He said, son, I have an idea. And they went to the guy, I don't know how you call the guy that feeds the fire, because these were steam engines, and they used coal. So they get a bucket with coal, and they begin to rip the pages from Signs of the Times. They will rip the pages, wrap a piece of coal, and when people will pass by with the barges, they will throw the pages to them. They'll throw the coals and the pages to these people. And the son will actually get the pages and prepare, and the father will throw them to these people and wave to them and say, hey, get this, and they'll throw to the people. They're trying to use any possible way to spread the Advent message, even the simplest way of ripping pages and wrap a piece of coal and giving the piece of coal to the people that pass by. Yes? I'm sorry? No, I mean, this is James White. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't get it. So, got it now. Coal porters, yes. Yeah. So, by the way, as you know, the Adventist word, in the Adventist movement, people were extremely creative in trying to give the Advent message to as many people as possible. And printing was one of the ways of doing it. They spent a lot of money in printing and giving away materials. But I'm using a few ideas. I mean, what means to be creating in trying to reach out to people. When I was back in Romania, I remember one lady, she would come to our church. She was a very fine young lady. College degree, I think she was an engineer. Very, very nice. Very nice. She was the only one in her family. The family was not Seventh-day Adventist. But she would come to our church and study the Bible. She was an excellent, excellent young lady. And I remember one day talking to her, and she said, I would like to do mission work, but I don't know what to do. I can't, because of my family, I can't be part of any outreach programs. But she said, I found a way of doing it. And I said, what do you do? And she said, I got a phone book. And in those days, in the phone book, you have the address of a person, the name and the address. And she said, I got the phone book, and randomly I pray, and I write letters to these people. She'll get the phone book, write a letter, handwritten letter to these people. Look, Jim Jones, or whatever the name of a person was, and she'll, dear Jim, I'm a Christian lady, and because I care about your life, and she'll write a letter to the individual. I said, I don't know who you are, I'll never meet you, but I want to invite you to follow Christ. And she will write these letters to these people. She was trying to find a way to reach out to other people. And that was her way of trying to reach out to other people. In Fresno, there's a brother, his name is Jim Carr. And he had a Toyota Corolla, silver car, Toyota Corolla. On his car, you have a big banner, one of these big stickers on the car which says, Bible studies. If you are interested in Bible studies, call this number. On both sides of his car, big banners glued to his car. If you are interested in Bible studies, call this number. Believe it or not, one of the members in Fresno Central, a young man, was actually brought to the church by Jim and his simple method with one of these stickers on his car. And he had, he would park his car in any places. And I was thinking, wouldn't that be interesting that we all put a sticker like that on our cars and say, if you're interested in a Bible study, call this number. It would be interesting. I mean, may spoil a little bit of the paint of your car, but I don't know, if someone would find God because of advertising it that way, I think it's worth. I was at a convention with pastors, and they invited a dentist to speak to the pastors. And this dentist, he said, I was praying and thinking and asking Lord, I said, Lord, what can I do to reach out to my patients and to reach out to other people? And he said, one day I came up with a very simple idea and said, I printed the page and put it on my door, and I said, Thursday afternoon, 6 to 7, Bible study in the office, Dr. So-and-so, come if you are interested. And that was his method. And he would have groups of people that would come in his office from his patients to do Bible study. And his method was very simple. He said, what I did with my patients, that was his method. He said, we would start reading the Bible from the beginning. And to the participants to the Bible study, I'll give them a Bible and a concordance. You know what a concordance is, right? He said, to everybody that would come to my Bible study, I'll give them a Bible and a concordance. And when a topic came for discussion, I'll ask them, I said, you look in the concordance for this word and you do a study. When you come next time, you share what you found. Now, when you read the Bible from the beginning, what do you find in chapter 1? The creation in 7 days, right? And in chapter 2, you find the creation of man. And you find the Sabbath very soon. And he said, a few times it happens that people will read the Bible, go home, do a study on the Sabbath, and come back home next time and they'll say, well, it's clear. It's in the Bible. The Sabbath is the 7th day. Very simple. And he said, sometime I would have people that will be 6, 7, or 8. Sometime I had only 2 people. And said, it didn't matter for me. I had only 2 people. It was the mayor and his wife. So that was his method in trying to reach out to people and, being creative about reaching out to someone. As Brother Bill mentioned, this is our booth at the fair. We do this, Your Health Age in 3 minutes. We printed bags. We have a number of bags. One day you'll get one of the bags, we'll bring them. Because we printed a lot of them. So we have bags and we have materials and on and on. So you see people here talking. These are people from Clear Lake. It was Thursday night. Here is Jill, Scott, Brother Bill talking to a few people. Next to us are workers from the Sutter Hospital. On the other side, there is a guy, you don't see him because of the people. There is a guy doing some promotional for gutters, for some filters for gutters. We begin to talk to all these people. And talking to the people at the hospital, and talking to other people. So it's a simple way. It's a very simple way. It obviously takes a little bit of, if you want to call it, courage, to be there and talk to strangers. But I was surprised that Scott, Bill did excellent, and Jill. Actually, everybody that's there, they just interact with people in a natural, normal way. And you don't have to be a theologian or a professional just to reach out to people. So, the third point, finding a creative way to reach to someone's heart. When we are in the business of soul winning, we'll find creative ways to reach out to the hearts of the people. Talent, time, creativity will be used by all who are in the business with Jesus of saving souls. So, in the last passage for today, prayer and effort and prayer will be the business of your life. You must pray as though the efficiency and praise were all due to God, and labor as though duty were all your own. Many times I'm looking at the church as my own business, and I'm thinking, if this place would be my own business, What would I do about this place? Well, I'll put a sign outside. So we're working on a sign, and soon we'll have a sign, right? You need to have people know. How would the parking lot look? How would the property look like? How would the restrooms be? How's the kitchen? If this is my own business, that's the way I would look at it, right? That's what you would do for your own business. Would you make your business visible? Would you have a good Facebook page? Would you have a nice web page? Of course, if you have a business and if you care about your business, you'll be very creative and you'll try to do it as good as possible, right? If we are in the business of soul winning, shouldn't we do the same thing? And I think you do a wonderful job in many aspects, or we do a wonderful job in many aspects. So one of the questions is this morning, if we are in the same business with Jesus and with God the Father, how creative are we in this business? Our son has a business. And I'm looking forward for the day when he's going to ask me, Dad, how do you think I can make the office, my office, an outreach for other people? He has some plans, but he's not there fully yet. But I'm looking for that, and I would like to have him make his business a business for Jesus. And there are people with this frame of mind that in everything they do, the underlying thought in their mind is, what can I do for other people? How can I reach to someone else? In any kind of business, if you go to the market, if you go to the mechanic, if you go to the doctor, if you go looking for an opportunity to reach out to a soul, to reach out to someone. So the invitation this morning is, basically it's a review of what we've said, but this morning my invitation is to revive in our minds and in our own hearts, the commitment to be in the same business with Jesus, in the same business with God the Father. Again, I don't know the particulars of your life, but we all can reach out to someone, and we all can be creative enough to reach out to people and to see people, if not today, maybe tomorrow. I may know or I may never know the results of a book you share with someone, or a prayer you share with someone, or a conversation you have with someone. You'll never know. Any questions? No questions? Well,
Any suggestions for reaching out to somebody who may or may not have any background in religion?
we will have a class. So we intend to have a class. The following Sabbath, the third Sabbath when I'm here, there is a social committee that's scheduled to happen after potluck. So I don't want to interfere with that. I was actually thinking to see, for those of you who might be interested in learning how to do better outreach and personal evangelism, I was thinking to ask if you don't mind staying for just a few minutes and set up a time and a place. If you are interested in developing personal skills in reaching out to others, what's in my mind is, if you are interested, or for those of you who are interested, next Sabbath I can come from Clear Lake, be here at 2, and we can have a class next Sabbath, even if I'm not here, because the following Sabbath is the social committee. But we can, during the class, we'll have more of a personal interaction for those of you who would be interested. And as you've heard Andrew saying, beginning with October, one way to reach out to people is to try to go to that we go to them. That's one way. It's not by any means, it's not the only way. Not everybody is comfortable with that. But some of us will. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be there. Not everybody can do that. But some of us will. Let me ask you a question before we end the service today. If I would like to teach a class on personal evangelism and how to do personal Bible study, but how many of you would be interested in the class? Oh, there is a number of you that would be interested. How is the following Sabbath, 2 o'clock, working for you? Would that be okay? For some of you, it won't. For some of you, it's not going to work. But let's try to do that, Brother Bill. What's your suggestion? Is that going to work? What do you think?
It will work. 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock next Sabbath. So next Sabbath at 2 o'clock, we'll begin the first class in personal evangelism and Bible studies for those of you who are interested. And maybe it's going to be here. I'm going to come from Clear Lake, and I'll be here at 2. Well, thank you very much. I pray that the Lord blesses and inspires you in how to reach out to your neighbors and friends and people. And stay in the business. Mike?